Before and after paradise. In late summer sky, at the sea wall make utterance, for it is through. Before enclosing perihelion recedes into a sundering aphelion. Before the oblate spheroid of primordial nebula passes and disappears into night song and shallow. On the following day, before suspended in the hollow, before torn from the thin thread of tenderness, before maligned by the voice of stone against stone, across the invisible bridge make utterance, while unraveling thread. Before toll of bell tower and diminution of flocks, before flame turns to sand, and sand rests as heap within the glass prison of dead time. Before the great third, fourth, and fifth eye of storm, gathering of red chaos and orange counterclockwork vanishes within the revolution of the half-day. At the philosopher's gate make utterance before the finding withers the root, before the appearance of failed star in late summer sky, weary red giant with breath of fire erodes and rattles its final whisper of pale ochre light. Before Tiamat returns and raises her cloud of Centaurian orts, before nail is pounded into bark of living tree, before the breath of rainfall upon pores of welcoming skin passes into memory, before utterance passes into word, before this great reality of now passes into that obscurity of once, then, and never again. A grist of stone and memory. Grist, as in what is ground, from form and black into earth and loam, by spindle and thread-bearing of the turning loom, by twist and turn of the spoken sky-wheel, and upturn of the sodden mire, by spinneret of thrift and silken tendril, core, fracture, and cleft, and blade of emerald and purple rye, by the sacred craft of the unfed orphan who imagines, steals, or receives an eternity of freshly baked bread and the hesitant glimmer of a widow's smile. Grist as in what can be counted, counted on, counted upon, what matters, what is made and unmade, entirely of matter, memory, and meaning. Grist as in that which remains outside of text, the binding, the seam. Morning light and the arc of moon sliver, breath of cold shivering through open window with its promise and certainty of rain. Honeycomb and corum, crown, corona, column, cumulate and cluster, copse. Even this, the corpse of the willow stump, tomorrow's destiny and brittle return, metaphors and evanescence of the consciousness of it, and whether pebbles across the water, ripples from origin into the abstraction of nether, sign ground into word, word back again into measure, thought ground and ground again and again, closer and closer to presence, hive and swarm of becoming. What is gathered, what gathers and collects, the bramble, the broken branch, image fleeting, dire, the honey-celled hive swarms with light and desire, iridescence of gathering and one, the oneing, the oneliness in wonder, grist as in grist of gathering cells, as in grist of light, as in shimmer, sparkle, as in marvel and wonder, as in a grist of stone and memory. Diffraction and talus. To be certain of this, that even within the narrow chambers of the heart, with its hesitance, rancor, and precipitant gambit, there an emerald purple shimmer of beetle's wing, in neph beam of sun shaft through faceted cell structure of honeycomb, that even in wreckage of weir and barbed wire, dead leaves, septembral caw and rusted harrow, that even in the imagined threadhair of phosphorescent unsurety between unquestionable dark and absolute shadow, vision song is bearing of what is. Is revelation of essence, the spreading of iridescent wings over Sisyphean talus, the sartorial speaking of stones amongst the scrawl and wail of the noisome fractals, the grinding and return of the shri skringa abaldbuff, to bear witness to this, that in the weeping the shrill rises above the pitch of the nether, the dulling, the squall, light, and the storytelling of ravens, as opening an entrance from, into, through, and by way of passage within the shimmer black. The larval bray and gleam of deepish Prussian void, embrace of dove flight at dawn, curl of wilting cabbage leaf, as the visible unfolds into minutiae of becoming, as if to tear and rent the iris of ineluctable stasis and stammering enclosure is to would-be within desire, to bear surety in the bearing, that reft of wheel beside Nidashorn will murmur that it must, that talon is the grip, grapple, and grist of the vision-telling, that pearled never-wing of branch-flesh of world-tree, that morning rain is paradisal baptism of the ontic meerseam, the now, that the air we breathe and the rest of the remainder is sacred and unnameable. Embryonare orach, brios antarachira var, paramorphare, to know from within the shudder of flesh, the concourse of horizon, hinge of human destiny, to know from the printed page the dot matrix of both word and speaker, to know from silence the measure of silence, from pleasure the arc of loss, the measure of emptiness, the compass of separation, from raven the insight, from the hollow, from within the opal black fracture, within, from within all of this the language of star and stone, from scree and blather, the end of the unknowing and the terminus of the known. Between the heliotrope and the between I and thou, between the comparison and the stone, between heliotrope and wall, between the footsteps frozen in the clay and the form of the pathways and patterns and the brittle we define, between the name of the labyrinth and the nameless garden in which we wander, at the edges of the fray, between the convergence of morning sunlight and the pages of the book, between the sleep and the breaking of light, between the dream of the lion and the pluvial fissures in the rock, between the gray-silver cumulus across the sky, between and the between.